welcome back to Normal Island. I hope you had a great week so far. And no, I'm not Sarah Dalal. I know you was expecting her. I do apologise. So the reason why we were late again was because we're trying to set up her hosting duties in a studio and it just wasn't happening. So don't worry though, she is still here. She is my guest for tonight. Sarah, I hope you're all right now after the sort of flustering of trying to set up the studio.
I was so flustered. I'm just not tech savvy. It took getting a new laptop, which I did, and then needing to set up stuff. Impossible.
To be fair, it's not easy. There's a lot of stuff going on. You've got your laptop, you've got your camera, you've got your microphone, you've got your teleprompter. But don't worry, you will be hosting very soon. Hopefully, maybe next week. I don't know.
Maybe.
We'll see. We'll get you into it soon. But obviously, for tonight, it is me. So don't be too disappointed. Now, pre-warning, tonight's show may be a little Trump in America heavy. So trigger warning in advance because he's insufferable. But he has been dominating the news this week. So that being said, this is what we're going to be talking about on tonight's show. ASMR deportation video released by the Trump administration. Trump calling Zelensky a dictator. Nigel Farage hands over ownership of reform to members. Now, before we start, as ever, make sure you like the stream. Please keep the comments going as we'll get to them about halfway through the show. And we have just hit 18,000 subscribers, but we're pushing towards that 20,000 mark because that's a nice little milestone. And I would like to see that in 1 or 2 months. So please help us get there. So if you're not subscribed, hit that button and also the notification button too, because a lot of our subscribers don't know we go live or see a video. And also tell all your friends and family about us. Make sure they know about Turn Left. But on with the show. On to our first story. The machinery of state violence often operates in shadows, behind closed doors and under the pretense of bureaucratic necessity. But in the latest grotesque evolution of America's deportation apparatus, the White House has chosen to thrust its cruelty into the public eye, repackaging the forced removal of human beings as digital spectacle. In a video released to its social media platforms, the Trump administration presented an ASMR-style recording of an illegal alien deportation flights, in quotation marks, in which the ambient sounds of chains, footsteps, and murmured voices were foregrounded as if they were the gentle rustlings of a comfort video. We're going to take a look. I mean, what is that? It's disgusting. It's chilling. I mean, this calculated display represents more than just a crude media stunt. It's emblematic of the broader normalization of state violence, a deliberate attempt to erode public empathy by aestheticizing suffering. The dehumanization of migrants has been a cornerstone of US immigration policy for decades, but the transformation of their removal into performative content signals a disturbing shift in both tactics and ideology. No longer satisfied with detaining and expelling people in silence, the state now seeks to create a passive audience for its brutality, to render deportation into something to be consumed rather than opposed. And if you thought it couldn't get worse, well, look who responded. That's right, Musk reposting the video and captioning it with, haha, wow. God, he's such a dweeb, isn't he? And adorning it with troll and bedel emojis was later shared by the White House itself, a tacit endorsement of its dehumanizing message. It is just disgusting. Now, the echoes of this system are not new. They are deeply embedded in the United States' historical legacy of forced removals and human subjugation, the use of chains, the reduction of human beings to mere cargo, and the mass displacement of racialized populations all bear eerie similarities to the brutal machinery of chattel slavery. Just as enslaved people were shackled, transported, dehumanized for economic and political gain, today's deportation apparatus echoes these same dynamics, perpetuating the notion that certain bodies are disposable, that their suffering is inconsequential, and that their forced removal is merely an administrative necessity rather than an act of profound violence. Now, Amy Fisher, director of the Refugee and Migrants' Rights Program at Amnesty International USA, told Newsweek, Amnesty International has documented this practice by CBP and ICE extensively, and in 2022 found that the use of restraints on Haitians in this way amounts to race and migrant-related torture under international human rights law. President Trump is purposely ordering that people seeking safety to be paraded in shackles, synonymous with slavery and criminality, and dehumanizing people for the sake of social media engagement. It was then and always will be a harsh and evil practice. Now, of course, she's absolutely right. Firstly, the verbiage of calling human beings aliens is horrific. But add on top of that, this video alludes to the menacing and sinister history of chattel slavery. Just as enslaved people were shackled, transported, and dehumanized for economic and political gain, today's deportation apparatus echoes the exact same dynamics. I think we've got on my script, I think we're doubled up. The Trump administration's deliberate transformation of this cruelty into public spectacle is not an aberration, but a continuation of America's long history of racialized state violence, where visibility serves to reinforce dominance. Now, this video is more than just a provocative social media post. It's a chilling demonstration of how modern authoritarianism adapts to the digital age. Sarah, big intro there, but give me your thoughts on this. What do you make of Trump's pattern of political theatre?
I mean, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Like the use of ASMR to kind of disguise the atrocities of this administration. I mean, ASMR is like a genre that's explicitly put out there to kind of evoke relaxation. So how can you put this alongside trying to entice an audience into like the niceties of deporting people? It's just completely dehumanizing. And I think it's a cynical manipulation of like the sensory experience of what an ASMR video should be like. But then it's dulled with the sharp edges of cruelty. So like, what can we do to view these individuals as subhuman? Wow, let's try and entice them with like the chains and stuff. And I think anyone who's like sick in the head is going to be like, yeah, what a great video. We need to get rid of them. But yeah, I think absolutely heinous in nature. And then to see Elon Musk respond to that as well, I think it just kind of adds to the theatrics of it all.
Well, that's exactly it. It's the theatrics. You know, look, I think a lot of liberals might look at this and go, oh my God, I can't believe this. But what we have to realize is, I mean, aesthetics aside, optics aside, this has been essentially the policy of the state apparatus of the USA, right? We've had this kind of policy for decades. You know, Obama said he was going to close down Guantanamo Bay in 2008. Still hasn't happened. So I think that the performative, we'll talk about the performative aesthetics to it in a second. But I think there are a lot of people who will look at this and feel really horrified that this is some sort of new wrinkle in the US's immigration policy, when the state has always done this. It's always looked at black and brown bodies as disposable, or they've dehumanized them. It ties into their foreign policy and the way they kind of act as world police and support genocides, you know, of the Palestinian genocide, for example. So there's that aspect too. I think a lot of people may look at this and think this is an extra wrinkle in this sort of immigration policy, but it's the continuation of what the state has always done, right back to slavery.
Completely agree with you. And this goes back to it, doesn't it? Like, this forms the fabrics of American society. Like, this is an American psyche. View those that you can racialize easily as alien. And the fact that I think they still use that verbiage in a lot of their legal documents, like a legal alien, or
wild, isn't it?
It's so insane. I think that they still want to dehumanize those that they don't deem as American. And I think it's particularly white Americans that they deem as the most notable figures. But you're absolutely right. This is something that's continued throughout almost every administration, where they do these mass deportations deportations. And I was literally sitting in a live just watching this on TikTok, and someone said, yeah, they do about 1,000 a day, and that's not enough. And I'm like, it's not enough? Like, you're insane. So I think people actually really carry the sentiment that they feel that their countries swarmed by all of these people coming in from different countries, and they need to get rid of them. But ICE are carrying out almost, like, they've carried, I think, 11,000 arrests in 18 days. Like, that's quite a lot, and that's in 2025 alone. And then supplement that with every administration before Trump and then Trump again. Like, it's continuously happening. It's now becoming a norm.
I mean, as I was just saying, that in terms of policy, not much has changed. But let's talk about the optics of this now. This is obviously new, because I think beforehand the discussion around immigration, from right-wing politicians all the way up to the centrist politicians, even centre-left parties, will say that it's a kind of a necessity. Oh, no, we need to clamp down on immigration. It's something we have to do. We can't afford it, or, crime, or whatever dog whistle they use, right? But this is something new, that instead of looking at this going, oh, it needs to be done, it makes me feel uncomfortable, this coupling of ASMR. For those that don't know, ASMR is a type of content where it helps relax you. So if you go on YouTube, type in ASMR, a lot of people try and do visual and audio triggers. It's a very relaxing sensation. Basically, it's a positive experience. And they're coupling a nice positive experience with something so disgusting and heinous. And the reason why they're doing that is because not only do they want you to be complicit in these horrific deportation policies, but they almost want you to feel good about it. They want you to take something positive from this, and this is something definitely new, I think, and definitely new, something that Trump and obviously Musk and all those in the administration, it's a new thing they're trying to do. It's not just to allow it to happen, but it's actually to enjoy it and call for it even more.
Absolutely. Like, by merging the aesthetics of online content culture with state repression, it's almost oxymoronic. Like, the administration attempted to transform deportation and something as awful and traumatizing as that into a form of ambient noise, like something to be acknowledged, something to be appreciated, but like perhaps even commented on, but ultimately like accepted. Like, people will welcome ASMR into their lives, and it's like, now welcome the deportation of these aliens that are coming into our country. It's I think insidious in nature.
Yeah, it's insidious, and obviously one would expect someone like Trump and their administration to do this. But this is happening now with the Labour Party in the UK. I mean, they have announced, and they have done, they've been filming, ripping people from families apart, and they've been doing deportation videos. Now, of course, they haven't added like ASMR to it, and they haven't necessarily said, oh, you should feel pleasure from this. But in a way, it's kind of like deportation porn. No matter the way you dress it up, if you're doing something performative like this, and we're going to make videos of the police and officers going in and deporting loads of people, and the Labour Party, the government, is doing this and then putting it online, really, what is the difference? I mean, it's so funny how those of us on the left critiqued or criticize Keir Starmer, saying they're really right wing, and then the sort of media pundits go, all right, they might not be as left wing as Jeremy Corbyn, but to say they're right wing is ludicrous. You guys are cranks. And it's like, are you sure about that though? I mean, this is performative. It is deportation porn, and they're doing the same thing, aren't they?
They are, but is this not the normalization of state violence? Like, I mean, either way, whether it's done through some sort of pornography, or whether it's done by means of, today we've got rid of 500 people, like, they're both doing the same thing. I mean, but one's kind of like trying to embellish it as something that's really great, but people are always going to the ones that don't like immigrants are going to take it as a win. So the normalization of state violence, I think, is now becoming a very, very normal process, and I think one that kind of requires public complicity, and the public will tend to be relatively complicit if that's what they're voting in for, and then kind of this institutional compliance too. So I don't know, I think we risk, if we don't challenge it, then I think we risk having stuff like this become more of a norm, and things that will become part of our everyday content. And I really hope that that's not the case. But if anything, does this not like have people confront it way more? So you see what this administration's doing, you're seeing that they're publishing it as an ASMR video, and then you're confronted with the uncomfortability of something that should be comfortable. The ASMR should be comfortable. The deportation of people is uncomfortable, but we're still subjected to it. Like, I still felt really physically sick watching that video. Like, how can you make something as ridiculous as this seem appeasing? And it wasn't appeasing. It was like almost dystopian. So yeah.
Just to quickly take away from this a second, did we, modders in the chat, did we get rid of that person? Noah Cross said something pretty damn racist in the chat. Is he gone? Thank you, everyone in the chat, for doing that. We love a discussion and debate. You can disagree, but I'm not standing for that absolute disgusting racism. So if you're watching, by the way, you're a fucking loser who's probably never had a partner in their lives, and no one's going to touch you with a barge pole. Anyway, I'm so sorry to take away from that.
But that's okay. I didn't see what they said, thankfully.
Yeah, no, it wasn't nice. Now, these media tactics do not exist in isolation. They accompany a dramatic escalation in the US deportation regime, with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, carrying out over 11,000 arrests in the first 18 days of 2025 alone. The administration has expanded detention facilities to meet these quotas, reopening long-shuttered sites and repurposing federal prisons to accommodate the detained. This feels like state violence is increasingly being presented, as you said, as passive background noise. So what does the White House's use of ASMR aesthetics do to depict deportations? Reveal about the broader cultural shift and how state violence is mediated and consumed.
It seems that they're trying to have it be consumed in a way that's palatable, so that it's almost like when you watch atrocities all the time in the news, I think some people do end up becoming very, very desensitized to it. So how do you desensitize people to the idea that they're going to be getting deported? Like, let's push it in your face. Like, let's make these people watch it, and let's show them that it's not that bad. Like, it's essentially just propaganda. Like, look at what we're going to do as a Trump administration. Look at what we're going to do as the Labour Party. We're going to put people, we're going to deport them, we're going to put them in detention centres. Like, look at who we're collaborating with. Like, it is just a performative act, like, just like you said earlier, like political theatre, where it's, let's make it as palatable as possible, desensitize these people to things that are normally quite atrocious, and fuck it, like, here it is. And so, yeah, I think it is just desensitizing people, to be honest, and that's what worries me. You cannot be desensitized to things that are inhumane in nature, and I think if people are beginning to think that this is a normal reality, then you really need to question that.
Okay, yeah, I agree. But we're pressed with time, actually, so we are going to move on. Of course, sticking with Donald Trump. Donald Trump's latest salvo at Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is a prime example of his signature rhetorical blend, an assault of half-truths, outright lies, and self-aggrandizement dressed up as hard-nosed realism. In a single Truth Social post, I still can't believe it's called Truth Social, by the way, Trump has simultaneously painted Zelensky as a dictator, undermine Ukraine's legitimacy, and position himself as the only viable broker of peace. Beneath the bombast, however, is a more insidious reality. Zelensky admits that half of the money we sent him is missing. He refuses to have elections, is very low in Ukrainian polls, and the only thing he was good at was playing Biden like a fiddle. A dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast, or he is not going to have a country left. In the meantime, we are successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia, something all admit only Trump and the Trump administration can do. Biden never tried. Europe has failed to bring peace, and Zelensky probably wants to keep the gravy train going. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered, and millions have unnecessarily died, and so it continues. God, there's so much to unpack there. Okay, let's begin by saying that Trump's remarks are not rooted in concern of Ukraine's welfare. I think we can all agree with that. They are a calculated attempt to frame Zelensky as an obstacle to peace, sow doubt among Western allies, and bolster his own political standing. His falsehoods on elections, corruption, public opinion serve a singular purpose: to justify an abandonment of Ukraine. Secondly, he lies, He lies. One of them, namely, being that Zelensky remains in the low Ukrainian polls, claiming that it's a mere 4%. What do experts say? Well, Professor Olga Enoch of the University of Manchester has pointed to the poll in which puts his approval rating at 63%, making him the most popular politician in the country. And she also states, perhaps the most ominous part of Trump's statement is this warning that Zelensky better move fast, or he's not only going to have a country left. This raises the question, move fast towards what? If Trump is implying a hasty settlement with Russia, this ignores the reality that any peace deal on Russian terms would mean Ukraine ceasing to exist as a sovereign nation. I mean, Russia has made clear that it does not seek negotiation but domination. As of 2024, Moscow continues to demand the recognition of its illegal annexation of Ukrainian territory and refuses to withdraw troops. Trump's suggestion that Zelensky must concede suggests either a fundamental ignorance of these realities or an implicit endorsement of Russian territorial expansion. His statement that we are successfully negotiating an end to the war is particularly bizarre, one that involves only Russia in Rydia and not Ukraine. Make it make sense. I mean, this rhetoric isn't about securing peace. It's about setting the stage for a policy pivot that would only benefit Russia and weaken NATO, all while feeding his base's growing isolationist tendencies. Sarah, Trump's claim that Zelensky is a dictator without elections, I mean, it kind of ignores the reality that Ukraine's constitution does prohibit elections during wartime. But also, Trump has never said this about Putin. But his claims about Zelensky is essentially he's hoodwinked Biden and the administration into a $350 billion war of choice, which only Trump can fix. I mean, why do you think this narrative is being pushed, and what impact, if any, could it have on Western support for Ukraine?
Because he's an antagonist. Like, Trump is just a pure antagonist. I mean, he's someone who wants to cause this rift, I think, with other European countries and how they're going to view Ukraine. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen because Trump isn't someone who can be trusted. But I think his antagonistic stance towards Ukraine is obviously going to posit, I don't know, a bit of a strengthening force with Russia. And I guess my concern here is that Trump is, I guess, attempting, like you said, to weaken NATO, B, position himself as someone who is going to save Ukraine potentially. Like, look at me, I'm going to these talks with Putin in Riyadh, like I'm doing such a great job. And like, watch me do it. Like, and even like when you saw his, like that social post that he put, the True Social, like it was full of absolute lies that everyone had to be like, no, this is so factually incorrect. So I don't know why he feels so emboldened to align himself with people who are Russia, Putin, who is trying to completely obliterate, I think, Ukraine in ways that are unforgivable. And I guess we need to think about the domino effect as well, because if this happens, will this then embolden other countries when it comes to their pressure? So in other countries like China and Taiwan, like, will it increase the pressure there? Like, so I don't know. There's a lot to unpack, and I think, I don't know. It's a bit of a worrying time, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, what Donald Trump is doing is he really is trying to change geopolitical lines. You know, since the Cold War, during the Cold War and since the Cold War, the big political factions worldwide has been sort of the West against Russia. And it's really interesting to see that, like, the leader of the West, that's the other superpower of the West, Donald Trump, is, you know, siding with Putin. So this kind of throws up uncertainty towards sort of political hegemony. You know, I think about China and BRICS. They're going to surely enjoy this, aren't they? Because the West is kind of divided, you know. And whilst we're doing that, we're going to see the rise of China and BRICS, and they're going to become maybe the new global hegemony. I mean, I think that was kind of already happening that way anyway. But what do you see about the sort of global order and things changing like that?
Yeah, because a weakened like a weakened NATO coupled with Trump's willingness to align with authoritarian leaders, I think would obviously dramatically reshape global security dynamics. And like I was trying to say earlier, but was completely fumbling my words. Like it would embolden adversarial powers like China, which may view America's wavering commitment to Ukraine, and not to Ukraine, but mostly to Russia, as an opportunity to increase pressure on Taiwan. So it's like if people see that America are willingly removing themselves from this space, putting themselves in this conversation, being like, okay, well, yeah, we align with those who are going to guarantee collective security, whatever, for our favor, then yeah, let's do it. But I don't know. I think his antagonistic stance towards Ukraine and his tacit approval of Russian aggression, I think sends a dangerous message to other countries, but also to NATO allies. If the US can so easily like abandon a partner fighting for its survival, then what does that mean for countries like Estonia or Latvia or Lithuania, like NATO members that rely on collective security guarantees? So Trump's rhetoric undermines obviously NATO's core principle, that an attack on one is an attack on all, and then everyone's going to kind of like, I don't know, I would hope that they don't follow in Trump's suit, but you never really know these days.
What I find really funny about all of this is that the political establishment always made it out that it was the left who were the threat to national security. Because obviously we would say, look, obviously Russia invaded Ukraine. Putin is a fascist, if you ask me. But also, let's be realistic, we are going to try and limit war as much as possible. And, you know, I'm a big critic of NATO, as anyone should be. It is a imperialist, capitalist sort of institution. Now, it's a complicated thing with NATO because given the threat of Russia, you know, my opposition to NATO has slightly evolved. I mean, I'm still principally against sort of NATO and any kind of sort of military alliance, but obviously it's a bit more complicated since the Russian invasion. But again, what I find so incredibly funny is even now when I brought this up on Monday, and I'll happily say it again, people on the left criticise my view when I say I'm happy for arms and aid to be sent to Ukraine to fight against Russian aggression. However, I will always draw the line at boots on the ground. Now, for some people, right, they think that's a tanky take. They think, oh, you're a Putin puppet, are you? Or when Jeremy Corbyn says, I'm very uncomfortable sending arms to the region, you don't know where it ends up. These are apparently the left, and socialists are the Putin appeasers, right? And we've always said, no, we are just anti-war, literally properly anti-war as well. And the real threat is always going to be people on the right. It's going to be neoconservatives and people like Donald Trump. And look where we are now. You know, they think that actually the left would have been the downfall of the West because, oh, we praise BRICS and we hate the West, which is not true. It's a mischaracterization of our view. And look what Trump's doing. In only a few months, he's destabilized the entire West. And we said this is the enemy, right? You might think that, okay, Trump is a piece of shit, whatever, but at least maybe he's going to be, you know, good on the military. Some insiders might feel that way. At least, you know, I would say the Democratic establishment were far more scared of a Bernie Sanders presidency than Trump. Well, look at what Trump's doing. And it's nothing to do with the left. And what they're trying to do now is then say, well, the left and the right agree then. Certainly do not agree. Absolutely not. So what do you think of that then? That even now, what Trump's doing, it seems like the left are still attacked and blamed for this somehow.
Well, there's always a scapegoat. There's always a scapegoat. I think there's always a scapegoat for people who choose to speak up when it comes to these atrocities. And it's like, no, you're not seeing it like that. Like, and it's just huge. It's just gaslighting. It's like, no, that's not how it's happening. That's not how it's unfolding. And it's like, no, that is how it's unfolding. You're trying to convince us that Zelensky is some sort of dictator without elections. Like, oh my God, the hypocrisy of US power. We know for a fact that the US has had huge involvement when it comes to actual dictatorships, supporting actual dictatorships. So I think anytime Trump is doing or saying something and we get blamed for pointing it out, I just see it as a gaslighting tactic. Like, no, you're crazy for viewing it that way. There's no way that you can see it like that. And actually, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be pushed into submission when something is wrong. Like, right is right and wrong is wrong. And I don't think that people are noticing it, which is a shame. It's a shame. I don't know how they're not noticing it.
I mean, I think part of the reaction as well is because the left is holding a mirror up to these people. It's saying, right, of course we oppose like people like Trump and what they're doing in terms of their foreign policy, but also the political establishment and the neoconservatives who've done foreign policy wrong for decades, we have legitimate criticisms, and I think it holds a mirror up to them saying we are bad as well, and they don't like that. I think it's just them lashing out. So they're never going to learn any lessons.
They're not, but the choice is not even between like endless war, like cynical, capitulation. But it's if anything, it's like it's between an imperialist world order and a world where peace is built on justice. And I feel like you said, if we're like putting this mirror up and they're like, no, I can't see what you're seeing, then I'm just like, I don't know how else to. I think all we can do is just keep speaking on it, just keep talking about it, keep debunking these myths and misconceptions, demystifying any misconceptions that people have around the Russian-Ukraine war, the Israel-Palestine war as well. Like all of these things, all of these conflicts that are happening everywhere, anything to do with economics, anything to do with global injustices, is just to speak on it. And I think the more time you speak on it, you will be met with challenges. But I think more often than not, people will somehow be convinced at some point. But
I mean, my favorite thing to do is just to say enlist. Why don't you sign up? Go on, sign up and fight.
I've not said that to someone before.
Just say that. If they say, "Oh God, you're Putin's puppet because I don't want more people being slaughtered,"
I don't get that.
Just say enlist.
I don't get how they're calling. Because I saw they were calling us tankies, but I do agree with you. I don't see the necessity in boots on the ground in Ukraine, because I just see that there might be some sort of antagonistic nature to it, and we don't know how Putin might.
I'm seeing on Twitter, right? It's like it's a centrist zinger. Like, oh, got you there when they say, oh, I love when the left says, bash the fash, kill the Nazis, and then there's an example of the fash, overtaking Ukraine, and suddenly like, oh, we don't want to side with them. It's like, are you really that fucking thick? Like, I think there's a difference between a fascist being next door to you, right? And then a war, which, again, I still say this, it's not our war, putting British troops at harm's way to fight. Yes, I think Putin is a fascist dictator, but still, there is a big difference here. But again, I think it's one of them gotcha things, because, again, they can't see their own hypocrisy, because ask them what their views are on Israel-Palestine, and you might see a big contradiction there.
There is.
Now, I mean, let's wait this money thing. Half the money has been sent to Ukraine. It's gone missing. There's no evidence for that. But Trump continues to spread this claim. I mean, how much of this rhetoric is about justifying a potential policy shift towards cutting aids, and how much is it about positioning Ukraine as a scapegoat for broader geopolitical failures?
So I didn't realize you were leading up to a question, because I was like, what money? Like, what are you talking about? But no, it's true. I mean, So I do think that this is, again, if we actually just go back to our first point initially when we first started this is all part of Trump's political theatre. This is all part of him trying to posit himself as an individual who wants to prove that there is corruption everywhere else and not corruption where he's sitting. But I don't know. I think what we have to do, particularly on the left, is kind of reject this false dichotomy between like interventionist militarism and like isolationist betrayal. And I do feel like every single time I hear of Trump, he is trying to push an agenda against like international solidarity and have us support betrayal. So let me feed you all this misinformation, let me feed you all of these false facts, and some of you won't fact check it, but if you maybe read certain news articles or you watch the news, when most of them probably don't because they're anti-establishment, don't trust the media, they'll be like, no, in Trump I trust. So there is power in what he's doing, and there is damage in what he's doing. But again, it is just needing to sift through the bullshit and be like, actually, this is false. So yeah, I think the money thing is absolutely insane.
I mean, you kind of made a good point there, because look, obviously the erosion of trust in the US as sort of a reliable ally, that could drive European nations to pursue greater military independence. We're actually already seeing it, right? Keir Starmer is saying we're going to send even more of billions of pounds to Ukraine, paid for through austerity, by the way. 11% cut. They're literally going to say we're going to send more money to Ukraine by making disabled people and poorer people's lives harder, right? We've got the political establishment saying the most important thing we can do is increase military spending, right? So of course that's going to be it's a unsurprising response. So I guess maybe it's two questions here, but my question is, given that it looks like the US has shifted away from NATO and the West's traditional policy, what do you think is going to happen? Is there going to be some sort of European army? I know that was a talking point of like leaving the European Union for that. Do you think that's palatable, possible? And also, what should the left's response be? Because you don't want to side with a fascist, as in Putin, and no one's doing that, by the way. But also, you want to critique the suddenly just spending even more money on the military. So, what is the left's response here? Because obviously, whatever we decide to do, you're going to be accused of something, as we kind of just sort of spoken about.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, actually, because, well, I think first we need to realise that, you know, Trump's vision here is not an end to war, but a shift in its beneficiaries. Like, I think he views war as something that's incredibly profitable. He has no more qualms about conflicts, only about who profits from them. So I think I think we've all come to that bitter realisation, and we know that his negotiations are not about stopping bloodshed, but about recalibrating that balance of power to benefit his faction of the US elite. So I think we've come to that bitter realisation, and now, as the left, do we all come together and form a European army? I don't know, maybe, but I think it's also just a case of genuine international like solidarity and support for nations resisting imperialist aggression, and an end to profit-driven like militarism. I feel like everything that's at the heart of this is profit orientated, and if we actually had a commitment to peace that prioritizes human dignity over economic advantage, then we might actually get somewhere. But no, we live in a world that's inherently quite greedy, and it seems that the motivations for profit are come before human life. So the answer to that question is, I don't know, megaphones, like super loud. Like I really wish that there were ways of going about things without it being violent. And I think that's some sort of utopian ideal at this point, because it seems that the only thing that you can do is, boots on the ground, like let's hold hands and let's just go fight. And I just wish it wasn't like that. But is that what it's going to have to look like?
Well, look, I think we need to acknowledge that this is not as simple as like the Iraq War. And I do see a lot of people saying, oh, well, you know, the left was against the Iraq War, which we should have been. It was very clear. But then you're then seeing sort of criticisms levied at those who are in solidarity with Ukraine, saying, how dare you call yourself anti-war? But these are entirely different scenarios. I mean, the Iraq War was just purely the West's aggression, and we were complicit in that. And we knew there were nuclear weapons of mass destruction, all that sort of stuff. That was just literally regime change. But this is obviously slightly different. So I do feel like there's not an easy answer to this one. I just think that whatever we do, whatever some of us on the left think is the right way forward, we need to continually criticize imperialism. And you're right, and I'm so glad you brought it up, continually criticize the profit making from the war machine.
Agreed.
So,
and I think I was a bit harsh, because I don't think humans are inherently greedy. Like, and I think I've had this philosophical debate so many times. But do you think humans are inherently selfish? And like, I actually don't. Like, I actually think that we do want the best for each other in some in some way or another. I think we do. It seems that when people are in these offices and they have this power, it kind of drives them in ways that are absolutely like asinine and insane. And then they do, like you said, are driven by profit and lining the pockets of the elite. So
whatever happens, someone is making a killing out of it.
Making money.
I think we're going to go to our comments now. If we can bring in our producer. I love this new feature. I'm so glad we did it. I don't know whose idea it was, actually.
It's just nice as well to hear the voice. And
it is. And we love hearing Lewis's voice, don't we?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
I can
well,
hear
that's
you.
ASMR.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello.
Let's have a look at some comments then, Lewis. What have you got for us?
Sure. So starting from the top, this was Jim Speak's comment in relation to the ASMR videos, which are obviously absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, performance of bastardry is really good.
accurate.
Jim always comes up with zingers, doesn't he? Excuse me.
Yeah, we love Jim. We love
Jim. He's always the first one. I've said this before. First one there comes up with a zinger. We like it. But yeah.
Also, as well, just while I'm here, if anybody else has got any more comments that they want to put in by the end of this section, please put them in now. Obviously, Becca was very upset as well about the ASMR videos. I feel like that's something that a lot of people reacted to in the comments.
Yeah.
And again, obviously, Simon as well. Like, who the fuck does this in this day and age? Pre-revolutionary times.
It feels like it. like, is this a bit of a reach? But when World War II was happening and they were trying to, it is a bit of a reach, but I'm talking about the propaganda here, like the propaganda of making something look good when in actual fact it's the most atrocious thing ever. Like the way they tried to depict the Holocaust, and it's like, oh, it's going to be like a great thing for you guys to come in and a holiday camp essentially, and actually no, it's the most atrocious thing that you can ever go through. And I feel like that's the same with these deportation videos. It's like, look at this incredible thing that's happening. Why would you not want to be shackled up and put on a plane and sent back to your country type thing? And it's almost like, yeah, like Jim rightly put, like just performative bastardry.
Well,
Like it's
it's kind of like
terrible.
almost some of the most evil things in the world are dressed up as positives.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that seems like a like a trying to sound profound and it's actually really dumb, but like it is kind of true. But I guess you would have to do that. You can't just say we're going to do evil things and it's all evil because people aren't going to buy that. But I don't know, Lewis. I mean, what do you think about these ASMR
Yeah, like
videos?
yeah, obviously, like in terms, I want to comment on the pre-revolutionary times part. That I feel like sometimes when you look through history, you can sometimes see the similar things happening to think, are we in this moment? And obviously, it's absolutely true. In terms of obviously how things are changing so quickly, it is possible that we are in that period. I hope, obviously, one of our friends made a video about this today, basically saying like everything that's happening, like even though there are obviously so many negatives to it, that we should take opportunities where they come. So in context of if Trump decides to pull out of European security, decides to absolutely F over Ukraine, decides to do all of these things, like that's bad. We don't want it to happen necessarily in that way, but let's take the opportunity while it's here to make change. So I hope people make the right choices and take the right opportunities.
Yeah,
So
well
we'll
said.
see. I'll bring up Jacqueline's comment. Elon Musk is going to cause more damage in the US than all people crossing the border altogether. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, did you see his recent wanting to buy chat OpenAI for like 97 billion?
Who's the guy's name? The
I can't
CEO
remember the guy's
currently.
name, but that was his co-founder, right? And it initially started off as a charity, and then he was like, and he put a tweet out, I was like, no, but I'll buy X for
Yes.
It basically told him
$9 billion.
to fuck off, didn't he?
Yeah, and I do think
Yeah.
like if Elon actually got a hold of chat OpenAI, like I don't know, like that guy's a danger. He's so dangerous. He's literally stood next
Sam
to.
Altman, Altman,
Yes,
Sam Altman,
yes,
Altman,
that's
yeah.
Altman. Sorry.
Yeah. They rejected the bid, so he's not getting it,
He's
but
not
who
he
knows?
getting
won't
it,
get
but
it.
look,
But the threat,
he has his own AI thing, doesn't he? Grok.
yeah, he's
Fucking weird
dangerous.
name.
He's dangerous. The way he stands next to Trump, I think he feels like he's got some sort of power as well, given that he's so close to Trump. Like he has this bravado now, standing in the Oval Office and thinking he has a say, and he does. Like that's the scariest part. So
But in
yeah.
terms of damages as well, in response to the news about Ukraine and Trump and Zelensky fighting back and forth, Elon Musk tweeted out, "Unfortunately, at community notes is increasingly being
Yeah.
gamed by governments and
Yeah.
legacy media, and we're working to fix this." And it's just like it's just so funny because Elon Musk is obviously perpetuating all this shit that Trump is saying, and then they're being fact checked on it. He's now not happy that the community notes system that he built, which is then fact checking him, is then using sources to fact check him. So he's going to change that now because he doesn't like reality.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the point. He doesn't like reality. And by the way, I saw this coming from Marloff. I knew that eventually he would do something to community notes, which is really funny because that was their response to fact checking. So Musk did the same thing, getting rid of official fact checkers because they're, controlled by whatever. Doing community notes, all right then, community notes is genuinely kind of democratic actually. And it just turns out that most people just don't fucking agree with you and think you're an idiot. And Musk is seeing that. And now it's like, oh, okay, well, I disagree with reality, but actually, governments are controlling it. It's absolutely wild stuff.
and I think somebody pointed this out in the comments too, and it's worth noting just in case it didn't get mentioned. It is specifically in Ukraine's constitution that if they are at war, they do
Yeah.
not have elections. This is not just Zelensky, using his influence and power over parliament to keep elections out of the way. It's just not true.
But there's also precedent for it, though, because we did the same thing.
Yeah, we did. We skipped the 1940s election, and there's been someone mentioned this in the comments as well. There's been a lot of misinformation about that today online and in various spaces because people were saying no, we were technically still at war when they had the 1945 election, which is technically true because we were still at war with Japan, but we did not have war in Europe at that point. So that's why collectively Parliament decided to still go ahead and do an election in 1945 and not do one in 1940. It made sense.
I mean,
Yeah,
like think about it. It is kind of difficult to have an election when you're literally at war, though.
Exactly.
And it does expose you to election rigging as well. I mean, it's going to be more likely. So,
and Trump made some comments
not
yesterday
unheard
about
of
getting.
with Trump.
And then Trump made some comments yesterday about getting a few more years in if he can. Again,
yeah, we did.
speaking of
Shock.
Jim again, it makes sense if Trump is compromised, which obviously is absolutely true. You know, the Russia investigation did show that there was meetings between Trump's team and Russia's in Trump Tower. Obviously, ultimately, the investigation didn't end where people wanted it to because it was influenced by the Trump administration. And maybe one day we'll find out. Hopefully, we will find out if
The
he's
thing is,
actually
though, like, it
compromised.
wouldn't. Maybe he is compromised, but he wouldn't have to be. First of all, this is just his character. He's just a piece of shit. But also, if you're an oligarch in the West, there's likely links to Russian oligarchs. The Conservative Party had a shitload of donations from Russia. What about right-wing commentators in America like Tim Pool and those sorts of guys being found to like basically getting shitload of money from Russia? Like, I think it's simply because these people align. At the end of the day, you can reduce this to a class issue as well. Russian oligarchs, there's a lot of Russian oligarchs in the West, by the way, who are trying to do their influence. Trump is a billionaire oligarch, so is Musk. They're going to work with other global oligarchs. I think that's one of the links there. And two, fascists typically like other fascists, right? I think Trump likes Putin. Trump likes what Putin is doing domestically. He probably wants to reenact a lot of that. So I think there's that connection too. So I would be surprised that Trump isn't compromised. He wouldn't need to be compromised to have his support for Russia. If he is compromised, that's also possibly the case as well.
I'm going to do two back-to-back comments from Harrier. So Harrier said, in supporting Ukraine, we are damned if we do and damned if we don't. I believe we should show solidarity with Ukraine. I know people are against wars, but a defensive war is sometimes forced upon us. And then followed up by, Europe should stand together.
Yeah, I mean, well, you take it.
In an ideal world, I think we would stand together, wouldn't we? Solidarity against global injustices and, a big middle finger to anything that's an imperialist structure. Like I would think that would be the case, but it seems that that's not the case. Like I feel like you've got, and this is where I'm going to bring Starmer into it, where he's like, well, potentially we could put boots on the ground. Like, and for me, that's like, I think it's just a performative gesture. I think we're stuck with politicians who are, or prime ministers who are cosplaying roles just to win votes. And it's not a case of we wanted to protect humanity. It's a case of what can I do to ensure that, I can just get the votes. But 100%, we should stand together. Do I think that we have a leader that can currently do that? I'm not sure, because I think he's too busy trying to be performative, and I think that everyone else is doing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, Lewis, you, in terms of sending British troops to Ukraine, I mean, me and you have a slightly different opinion on that. I mean, do you want to sort of speak about your position and what you think?
How dare you put me on the spot? No, I'm joking, of course. Yeah. So I am, I wouldn't use the word in favor, but I'm not against sending troops to Ukraine as long as it's like a joint force among European powers. I feel like if we don't know what obviously Zelensky is going to be forced into by Trump in terms of the land that he's going to have to give away. Trump's after this $500 billion in resources, which is ridiculous because they haven't even given that amount of money to Ukraine in aid. And actually, by the way, the European Union currently have actually given more. European Union and European countries as a total have actually given more to Ukraine. So obviously I'm not going to make the argument, well, where's our cut of the resources? I think asking for resources is disgusting. But otherwise, I feel like if Zelensky is just, got his land taken off of him, there's no support from the US after that, I feel like the only deterrence that we can actually give is a security force, because nothing is simply going to stop Russia from attacking again in the future. People are speculating today. I think it was the defense secretary saying that, we could well as be at war within Russia in 5 years. We've already got troops on NATO borders in places like Estonia. They're already there waiting in the thousands with resources, just in case anything happens. So I don't see any extra harm. I don't think Putin would attack if we had troops there. Obviously, that's a risk in itself. But I don't think there needs to be some deterrence. If we walk away with this,
what do you
then
think of the likelihood of a sort of a European army then? I know this was. I mean, remember the Brexit campaign, and Nigel Farage talked about it. He said he didn't want a European army. What does and obviously what's happened with the Russian invasion? It's changed a lot of context to what's going on. What's your thoughts on that?
I'll be honest and say I don't have a strong opinion on it. Obviously, I stand with what Harry was saying, where Europe needs to stand together and work together. That we definitely can start there. When I was listening to, I think it was the Newsagents podcast today, they had a guy on, I can't remember his name, from one of these like polling companies, and he was talking about how actually over the last few years, the support for a European army has actually doubled. But I can't remember the exact numbers, so I don't know how strong that support still is. So that is interesting because what I can say from confidence from that guy is that people are moving more positively towards it. So it obviously is interesting. But I remember, obviously, you mentioned this earlier, it was a contested issue, right, towards our membership of the European Union. People weren't happy with that. I'll be honest, I don't have a strong opinion on it. I right now, I will just vouch for Europe working together as hard as they can.
Yeah.
It would be ironic if there was a European army, and it was like that was one of the arguments people made against or leaving, and we did leave, and there was a European army anyway. That would be quite ironic.
I don't know if many people would actually be against it. I mean, strength in numbers,
I don't
right?
think so. Yeah, I agree. I don't think there'd be huge opposition to it. Doesn't always mean it's the right thing to do.
But would it actually do? I mean, because I find that Putin's just incredibly unpredictable. I mean, is he though? I don't know. I think that you know, they don't have a democracy over there. I mean, they claim they do, but I don't believe that they do. And with Putin, would he actually be afraid of British troops being on Ukrainian soil?
I think the problem though is, for me, when I'm thinking sort of further ahead, there will be utility in one to fight against Russia or defend against Russia. But like once that war is eventually done with, the European powers through a European army will absolutely just be imperialist. That's the problem. Like, I think certain military decisions are made for like reasonable for justified reason, I guess. But it's always what happens after that, you know. It's not like, right, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to have a temporary army and then dissolve. That won't happen. So what I can see is like basically the worry from BRICS and China that what will happen is a strengthened military European operation will just sort of try and smash the global order, and they try and be the sort of global hegemonic order. There's always a risk when it comes to it, and I think that's why I'm still like, look, I don't want British troops over there. I feel quite queasy about some sort of European army. Even I can see kind of like the logic and the utility for it right now, but it doesn't go away. Like when power structures come together, it never dissolves itself. So I think that maybe looking more long term, but these are such difficult questions, and I can't.
I did get into a slight discussion about this the other day when it got brought up, and you know somebody was saying, "What? Like we just hand over to some foreign general like access to our nuclear weapons?" And I was like, "Well, you know, I don't want to get too much into details because again, I don't know too much about it, but I don't think we need to jump that far ahead. I don't think like something like that would happen. I think it'd be a lot more like militarily
and Trident
focused.
Isn't even independent. Like I've said this to you before, it's controlled by the Americans anyway. So, which is why I'm actually I want to get rid of it. But
going back to that point though, like we have relied on US security for too long. That is a fact. And even though we wouldn't want Trump to pull out in this way, you know, he has a problem pulling out. But we wouldn't want him to pull out in this way and obviously put us at risk. But if it's happening, let's take the opportunity and make the most of it. If we can't stop it, we can't control it. Let's take the opportunity, work together in some way or another.
Big interesting points, big discussion.
That is the end of the comments for now.
I think one of our commenters said that is our email still working. Our email is working, so if you did want to email us, that'll be fantastic. But thank you for all your comments, and there's more coming in, and we're gonna read them after the show. I do just want to say before we move on, though, of course, there were some tech issues at the beginning of the show. It's Turn Left and Tech Issues. Like, that's the show for you guys. We should probably change Normal Island name to just fucking Tech Issues. But I just want to say...
No, don't. I'm
thank
traumatized.
you. Yeah, we're not going to change the name. I do want to say thank you to all of our viewers, all those who've commented, and a thanks to all of those who've supported us along the way. It really means a lot. But if you guys want to see this channel grow and the sky is the limit, the universe is the limit, then you can support us in many different ways. You can like this stream. That's very good for the algorithm. It shows it to more people. Please share our content. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to us and hit the notification bell. Please tell people about Turn Left, not just on social media, but in real life. You know, if you hear someone spouting some right-wing nonsense, say, haven't I got the antidote for you? Turn left. I mean, in more ways than one. But there's also, look, things cost money, so you can financially support us. And you can do that by going to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support there. You can support us monthly by signing up to our Patreon, or you can give us a one-off donation. All the links are on the website. Remember, give what you can. Do not put yourself in a bad situation, because we are all struggling in this hellhole of a neoliberal society. So don't put yourself out. But if you've got spare quids, then please consider chipping in. Or you could become a member for 99p. We've had a big spike of Turn Left membership, so I thank everyone for that. But we are going to go to our final story. My God, it's 9:30. I think it's everyone's bedtime soon, isn't it? So let's move on, and it is bringing it back to the UK. Nigel Farage, a figure synonymous with right-wing populism in Britain, has officially relinquished his ownership of Reform UK in what the party is framing as a move towards greater democracy. According to filings with Companies House reviewed by Reuters, both Farage and Deputy Leader Richard Tice gave up more than 90% of their shares in Reform UK Party Limited. The party is now under the control of a newly named entity, Reform 2025 Limited, which is purportedly governed by its 200,000 plus members. Party chairman Zahir Yousaf, in a statement, described it as promised, Nigel Farage has handed over ownership of Reform UK to its members. Reform UK is now a non-profit with no shareholders, limited by guarantee. We are assembling the government board in line with the Constitution. This was an important step in professionalising the party. We will soon have more exciting announcements about Reform UK as we prepare for government. Also, I think I said Reuters instead of Reuters. It's Reuters, and I think Lewis is in the chat. They're taking the piss out of me. Anywho, I can hear you, Sarah, laughing in the background as well. No one can hear it, but I can hear her. Yeah, sorry, Reuters. I'll edit that in post. Now, this statement reeks of corporate rebranding rather than a genuine commitment to democratic principles. Reform UK shedding its shareholder structure does not suddenly make it a grassroots movement. This is a party built on top-down control, where demagogues push an agenda of deregulation, xenophobia, and climate denial, whilst dressing it up as giving power to the people. In reality, the same reactionary elite remain in charge, ensuring that the working class remains divided, while the party's leadership continues to pander to big business and, of course, the billionaire press. This is a party where you had the defected Lee Anderson, 30p Lee, make incendiary comments that align with demagoguery than democratic discourse. This was a man that believes Islamists have taken control of the country, or shamefully, Richard Tice consistently pushing a hard-right economic and social agenda that undermines workers' rights, environmental protections, and progressive taxation. Sarah, am I the only one who is seeing the contradictions here? I mean, what do you think this now means?
I mean, it's just so reform, isn't it? Like, to do something like this, like, oh yeah, look, we're for the people, let's give it back to the people. And I don't know, you can almost like hear the echoes of corporate like PR executives like clicking their champagne glasses in a Westminster bar, and like the phrase professionalizing the party kind of doing some heavy lifting there. But I don't know, like, what's professional about a party that relishes scapegoating and sensationalism and conspiratorial thinking. Like, there are heavy contradictions here, but this is a party that tries to posit itself towards particularly the working classes, and yet they're still, I think, moving in a direction of wanting to line their own pockets. So I don't know, the contradiction's quite stark.
I mean, I think this is going to be a big story for them, of course. Oh, we've democratized the party. You're going to get media outlets, namely GB News, are going to, gas us up, right? Because, GB News doesn't exactly do any sort of journalistic integrity and the rest of the mainstream media. It's quite clear, though, as we've just sort of explained, that this is still a limited company. And of course, they're going to say, well, we gave 90% of our shares away. Yeah, from one limited company to another. Literally. Right? So it's not a political party. And the reason why they've done that is because if you're a political party and you have democratic structures, when that happens, that means there can be like legal cases. So, for example, of course, the Labour Party, when they screwed over loads of people rigging their democratic structures, people could take out legal cases. They could take the party to court for rigging sort of elections, internal elections or whatever, or expelling people unjustly. So technically, like, the political parties are held to account. But Reform, even if they say they're a democratic membership now, because the structures aren't in place, because they're still a limited party, they can just ignore the members, and the members won't really have a case. There won't be a legal standing. So it's all performative, isn't it?
It is all performative. Yeah, exactly. The contradiction of democracy and Reform UK is that it actually doesn't exist. Like, the track record, I think, when we look at prominent figures there who routinely undermine democratic principles is so apparent. And then obviously with this move that they've made now, the big 90% given back, it's not, it doesn't mean anything, because they're still going to be rooted in the same sort of stance of, well, I still want to line the pockets of the elite. I still want lower taxes for the rich. Like, nothing's going to change. I don't know how this is going to make the Reform Party seem redeemable or more likable. But I guess the ironic part of this is that they're actually doing better in the polls than Labour. So I don't know, like, will this then bump them up, bolster them up a little bit more? Who knows? But I don't know, like, the party as a whole, like, its general consensus is just, they're just dominating it with the same clique of opportunists who thrive on public discontent whilst offering nothing but regressive policies and taking from the working people. So I don't see anything different, or how it's going to change.
Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned that, Reform is overtaking Labour in the polls. I think they were number one, like 4 different polls, right? So is this indicative of a genuine ideological shift, or is it simply the electorate throwing its hands up at despair at Starmer's very, very uninspiring leadership?
Probably the latter, I think. I think people are kind of... it seems that people are still blaming this Labour government for the previous government's misdemeanours, and I think they struggle to discern what's happened under a Tory government and what's happening now in a Labour government. Hasn't been that long. So
it was quite easy to get confused between the two, wasn't it?
It is. You know what? You're so right. He's cosplaying, isn't he? He never left. So yeah, I don't know. It is. I guess maybe it is difficult, but at the same time, I don't think that he's likable. Starmer's not been liked. Starmer, I don't think is going to be liked anytime soon. So what are people going to go for? People are going to go for something that makes other people, like, they want their anger to be validated. They want their biases to be confirmed, and they feel like the Reform Party does those things and then some. Like classic right-wing populism, take public anger, polish it up with corporate branding, and package it as a movement for the people, and you're good to go. And that seems to be what's happening here. Yeah,
let's not forget about authoritarianism, right? I think we'll talk about right-wing politics, but authoritarianism is synonymous with right-wing ideology. I mean, it's their modus operandi. Think of so many autocratic and authoritarian regimes, all with very right-wing politics. So it doesn't surprise me that Reform, and of course Labour's right-wing shift, want to scrap of the democratic reforms that were made. Not radical enough in terms of the democratic reforms Jeremy Corbyn made, but even that, the Labour right wanted to rip it up. The Conservative Party not being very democratic. Reform don't want to be democratic. It is, I'm sorry to say, it's the modus operandi of the right. Okay, it's not just pushing right-wing ideology and policies; it's the way they operate. So no, I don't expect Reform to be a fully fledged democratic party, because that would fly in the face of right-wing political parties we've seen forever.
Agrees. No, I completely agree with you, and I think let's not separate Farage from this as well. Like, he's been the face of this movement quite considerably, and now Richard Tice is now the face of this as well. But although he's no longer the official owner of Reform UK, I think his ideological fingerprints kind of remain all over the party, and that authoritarianism is kind of seeping through. His influence over the media, and his continued presence in right-wing political circles, and the rhetoric is rooted in authoritarianism. So I don't know, like, I think he's had a role in shaping the party's narrative. The party's narrative around Reform kind of remain quite intact. So in essence, a vehicle for like Faragism. I don't know if that's a word, and actually I quite like it.
It's a new word now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Faragism.
Yeah, it is. I think his departure from
I could think of another word for that.
No, so I could think of a couple. They're not that nice. I'm not going to do it. But his departure from formal like ownership does little to really change the fact that Reform still operates under a populist pressure group rather than a serious political entity. And I think it's committed to not being a part of democratic governance, but if anything,
I think it's why. I mean, I hope it never happens, but it's a possibility that they form a government. But if they do, it'll be chaos, and they will be terrible. They wouldn't know how to do it. I mean, if you don't have any sort of structures within your political party, how do you expect to control the state? So, and a lot of fascists are obviously evil, but a lot of them are just incredibly incompetent as well. So, I feel like a Reform, their peak might be getting into government and then leaving very, very quickly. But that's hypothetical, isn't it? I think.
I don't want to entertain that hypothetical.
Don't entertain that hypothetical.
It's too scary.
Okay, it is 20 to 10. It's quite a late one. But I thank everyone to sticking by us. The same usual suspects are still in the chat watching us. I absolutely love that. But that is all we have time for. So I do want to thank our viewers who tuned in.
Thank you.
And of course, I want to thank Sarah for
honestly,
being our backup guest.
For being the backup guest.
But don't worry, we will get your studio set up properly.
It will be set up, guys. Promise.
But to plug us again, though, if you want Sarah to have a studio, it's all rides on this now. If you want Sarah to have a studio, then please consider becoming a Turn Left member for 99p, or go into our website, turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you can support our Patreon monthly, or there's I think there's Ko-Fi. You call it Buy Me a Coffee. You can give us, that's literally what it's called. You can give us a one-off donation. But I want to thank everybody in the chat. You are all amazing. It's so good to see familiar faces. And we will be back on Saturday for the debrief. I think it's actually me again. You guys are going to get sick of me. That's actually 3 hosting duties in a row. I do apologize for that. But again, thank you so much. My name is Curtis Daly. And thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.